We continue now at the top of Daf Lamed Vav Amud Aleph in Meseches Kiddushin. This is Kiddushin Daf 36a. And the previous Amud Isi brought a brisa which said that when it comes to the halacha of not tearing out one's hair over grief over someone who dies, so there's a prohibition to tear out the hair that applies only to men, and it does not apply to women. And Isi also says in that brisa that that's true in terms of the tearing out of the hair, but in terms of the gedida, in terms of the cutting of the skin, that does apply to women. And the Gemara said, well, why don't we say that gedida also does not apply to women, but srita applies to women? That would be two different kinds of cutting of the skin. And the Gemara answers that according to Isi Achasi, according to Isi, gedida and srita are all really the same thing. You can't make a distinction. Rashi says Achasi mashmo shteihen, meaning both of them mean the same thing. Bein biyad, bein b'kli. It just means some kind of cutting of the skin, whether with a hand or whether with a vessel. And so therefore Isi does not make a distinction. So gedida is going to be included. Women are considered to be warned in terms of cutting the skin because of grief over a mace, but there's no prohibition in terms of the tearing out of the hair for women. And the Gemara continues, Abaya says, Hainu taima de Isi, the reason of Isi is as follows. The Gemara karcha mi b'nei Aaron, he learns out of Gzera Shava. It says over here, karcha, again, you can't tear out the hair over a mace, and it also says by the b'nei Aaron. It says they can't tear out their hair. Rashi says, mi b'nei Aaron. T'chsiv, it says, lo yikrachu karcha berosham. It says they can't make a bald spot on their head. Gabe emor la kohanim, when it's speaking to the kohanim, and it says again, b'nei Aaron. And so therefore we understand, malahalon noshim peturos, just like over there, it's b'nei Aaron, not b'nos Aaron, the women are pater. Afkan, so too over here, when it was the general prohibition to Yisrael, so noshim peturos, so women are pater. But the Gemara says, this is similar to the previous Amud. If we right now hold that when the Pasuk says B'nai Aaron, it's going on everything that's discussed in that parsha, it's not only going on Tumas Meis, so then Nishto Kramine, so the Pasuk could be silent, meaning to say, we don't need to have a Gezerah Shaveh. B'teisi b'kal v'chomer, we could just have a Kal v'chomer from Kohanim. V'anoam, I could say as follows, Uma Kohanim sheriba b'hem akasav mitzvahs yiseiros, if we find by Kohanim, where in general the Pasuk has many extra mitzvahs for Kohanim, and yet we say B'nai Aaron v'lo b'nos Aaron, we say it applies to the sons of Aaron and not the daughters of Aaron. So Yisrael lo kal shekain, so when it comes to Yisrael, it's certainly true that it's not going to apply to the women. So what do we even need the Gezerah Shaveh for if when it says when it says in the pasuk lo yikrachu karcha berosham, so that's talking also about the B'nai Aaron only. So we should make a kal v'chomer B'nai Aaron v'lo b'nos Aaron, and in general it does not apply to women even by Yisrael. And the Gemara says ilav Gezerah Shaveh, if not for the Gezerah Shaveh, meaning to say we really do need this Gezerah Shaveh of karcha, because if not for the Gezerah Shaveh, hava amina hifsek kohenyan, I would think no, that there really is a separation, and that the B'nai Aaron, that term, the sons of Aaron, is not necessarily going on the prohibition of tearing out one's hair. But the Gemara continues, Hashtanami, but now also name a hifsek inyan. We should say even with the Gezerah Shaveh that maybe lo yikrachu karcha berosham is not going on what it says B'nai Aaron and not b'nos Aaron. V'mishum Gezerah Shaveh, and if you're going to say no, it must be going on that, because otherwise, what do we need the Gezerah Shaveh for? Mi boy le'lechidatanya, we do need the Gezerah Shaveh for something else. We need it for the following brisa. It says lo yikrachu. It says again they can't make a bald spot. Yachol afilo kerech arba v'chamesh karachos lo yechayv alachas. Now I might think even if the person tears out 4 or 5 different areas of the hair, he's only chayiv 1. Talmud lomar karcha. So the pasuk says again, lo yikrachu karcha berosham lechayiv al kol achas v'achas. That makes you chayiv on each tearing of the hair. And the Gemara says berosham at Talmud lomar. The Brisa says, why does it say berosham? Lefi shenamar, because it says in the pasuk lo tisgodedu v'lo sasimu karcha beinei nechem lameis. That's the pasuk that's said by Yisrael in general. Again, it says you can't cut the skin and you're not allowed to tear out the hair because of a mace, because of grief over the dead. And it says bein einechem, you can't tear out the hair between your eyes. So yachol lo yehei chayiv ela al bein ha'inayim. I might think that I'm only chayiv on the hair that's between the eyes in that area. Minayin l'rabos kol harosh. How do we know to include the hair on all of the head? Talmud lomar berosham, and that's what it says berosham. Again, berosham, that's what it says by the Kohanim. We're making this Gezerah Shaveh between the way it's phrased by the Kohanim and by Yisrael. L'chayev al harosh kebein ha'inayim, to say the entire head, all the hair on the head one's chayev for, just like the area between the eyes. V'yein li'ela kohanim sheriba behem hakasim mitzvahs yiseres. Now I only know that's true by the kohanim, where in general there's a lot of mitzvahs by kohanim. Yisrael minolan. How do I know to apply this idea to Yisrael? Nemar kan karcha. It says over here karcha. V'nemar lahalan karcha. And it says over there karcha. Ma'kan chayiv al kol karcha v'karcha v'chayiv al arosh kebeinu einayim. Just like over here we say you're chayiv on each tearing out of the hair, and you're chayiv on the entire head, just like the area between the eyes. Af lahalan chayiv al kol karcha v'karcha. So too over there you're chayiv on each tearing out of the hair. V'chayiv al harosh kebeinu einayim. And you're chayiv on the entire head, just like the area between the eyes. And then we make the gezerah shav in the other direction. Umala halan al meis. Just like by Yisrael, it's clear we're talking about tearing out the hair because of grief over someone that died. Afkan, so to over here, al meis, when we're talking about it by the Kohanim, we're talking about when you're tearing over the dead. And so the Gemara says to that, im kain, if so, meaning to say, if the gezerah shava was only for the limudim in this brayso, nichtov kra kerach, the pasuk could have just said without a hey. My karcha, why does it say karcha with a hey? Shamat min atarti. So therefore you see both of these ideas, meaning you see the first idea as well, that the word karcha is telling us that b'nei Aaron v'lo benos Aaron, it doesn't apply to the women, and we extend that by Yisrael as well, it does not apply to the women. And the Gemara continues, Rava Amar Rava says, Hainu Taima di Isi, the reason of Isi is as follows. Why does he exclude women and say there's no prohibition in terms of the tearing out of the hair? It's for a different reason. The Yolef Beinei Nechem mitfilin. It uses the language of Beinei Nechem by the tearing out of the hair, and it uses the same language by tefillin. Malahalan Noshim Peturos, just like by tefillin, women are pater from the mitzvah of tefillin. Afkan Noshim Peturos. So too over here, women are pater in terms of the prohibition of tearing out of the hair. And the Gemara says, "V'Rava my time alomer ka'Abaya." Now, why doesn't Rava say like Abaya, use the gezerah shav of karcha karcha? And to that, the Gemara says, "Kerach karcha lo mashmalei." He doesn't make a distinction just because of an extra hay that we should extend the gezerah shava further. That he doesn't understand that we should make such a gezerah shava. V'Abaya my time alomer ka'Rava. And why doesn't Abaya say like Rava? Why doesn't he learn from tefillin? Amar loch. So Abaya will say to you, tefillin gufayu. No, even tefillin itself. Mehacha gamarla. That's actually learned from here. It's the other direction. How do we know by tefillin? Malahalon makam sha'osim karcha begova shal rosh. Just like over there, the area where the bald spot is made is at the upper part of the head. Afkan soto over here. That's how we learn where to place the tefillin. Makam hanacha begova harosh. The area where you place the tefillin is on the upper part of the head, and so therefore it's not that we're going to learn from tefillin to over here. Rather, it's the other direction. We understand the placement of the tefillin from this prohibition of the tearing out of the hair. And Rashi explains, tefillin gufayu mehacha gemiri, tefillin is learned from here, kolomar hahi gezerah shava, meaning, that gezerah shava de beinei nechem, you're making a gezerah shava from beinei nechem, comparing the prohibition of karcha to the din of tefillin, mi boy leila migmar makam tefillin, that's used for the other direction, to say where tefillin should be placed. Mehacha de lotema beinei nechem mamish, don't think that you really put the tefillin actually between the eyes, dahainu al padachto, on his forehead, ela yolef mi beinei nechem de karcha, rather we learn out from beinei nechem by karcha, to makam that you have to place it in the area where there is hair. Because obviously you can't create a bald spot in an area that already did not have hair. We're obviously talking about an area with hair. That's going to be above the forehead. That's going to be the area between the eyes where there is hair. So we actually learn it in that direction and not in the other direction. And the Gemara continues, Ubein li Abayu, ubein li Rava. Now, whether we follow Abaye and Rava, so Hai Bonim Atem, my Dorshi Bey. What do Abaye and Rava do with the pasuk of Bonim Atem? Because on the previous Amud, Bonim Atem was learned out to say that this prohibition of karcha does not apply to women, and so therefore, what do Abaye and Rava? What do they do with Bonim Atem? And the Gemara says, Haimi boy l'chidetanya, they use it for the teaching in the following brayso. Bonim atem la'Hashem Elokeichem, it says, you are sons to Hashem. Bizman sh'atem nohagim minag bonim atem kruyim bonim. When you conduct yourselves like sons of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, then you're called bonim. But ein atem nohagim minag bonim. But if you're not going to conduct yourselves properly like bonim, ein atem kruyim bonim, you're not going to be referred to as bonim. Divrei Rav Yehuda, that's the opinion of Rav Yehuda. Rav Meir says, Bein kach uvein kach atem kruyim bonim. It's not true. No matter what, you're still called bonim, even if you're not conducting yourselves properly. Shenemar, as the pasuk says, bonim sucholim hema, talks about the foolish sons, but they're still referred to as bonim. V'yomer bonim lo emun bam. It also talks about bonim, but they didn't have faithfulness. V'yomer, and it also says zera mereyim bonim mashchisim. It talks about the corrupt bonim. V'yomer, and it also says v'hay b'makom asher yomer lehem lo ami atem. Even in a place where it said about them that you're not my nation, yomer lehem b'nei kel chai, but still they're referred to again as the sons of the living God. And the Gemara says, my v'yomer, what is the reason of the v'yomer, meaning to say, why do we have to add all of these psukim? And the Gemara says, V'chitema means as follows. If you're going to say, Sichli hu de mikri bani, maybe you'll say, Banim sechalim, when they're foolish, then they're called Banim, but ki lesbuhu em nusayu, but when they don't have faith, lo mikru b'nei, so then they're not called Banim. Maybe you'll say that. Tashma, so come in here, that's why we bring the other pasuk, V'yomer Banim lo emun bam, that's why we bring the pasuk about faithfulness. V'chitema ki lesbuhu em nusahu de mikru banim, but maybe you'll say when they don't have faith, so in that case, that's when they're called Banim. However, ki polchu la'avodas kochavim, but if they serve avodah zara, lo mikru banim, maybe you'll say they're not referred to as banim. Tashma v'yomer zera mereyim banim ashchisim, it talks about the corrupt banim, even if they're serving avodah zara, they're called banim. V'chitema banim ashchisim hu de mikru, but maybe you'll say even there, but they're called banim, but they're called banim ashchisim. But b'nei ma'alya lo mikru, but they're not going to be called true sons. Tashma, so that's why we bring the other pasuk, v'yomer v'haya b'makom asher yomer lahem lo amiyatem yomer lahem b'nei kelchai, even in a situation where they're not referred to as my nation, but still they're considered the sons, the children of the living God. And Rashi explains, B'nei Ma'alya lo mikra, I might think that they're not called true sons, od liola, meaning they can never do teshuva. That's what the Gemara means at the end, Tashmav, dahadri mikru b'nei kelchoi al yedei teshuva. That's why the pasuk says that they are going to be called b'nei kelchoi if they do teshuva. And the Gemara continues with the Mishnah Hasamichos when it comes to karbanos, the leaning on the animal, v'hatnufos, and the waving of certain karbanos, v'ha'agashos, and the bringing it close to the mizbeach, v'hakmitzos, by a carbon mincha they take the fistful, the komets, v'haktaras, and the burning on the mizbeach, v'hamalikos, by a bird offering, when they do the pinching of the neck, v'hakabolos, and the receiving of the blood, v'hazos, and the sprinkling of the blood, all of those parts of the bringing of karbanos, nohagim ba'anoshim, v'lo b'noshim. They apply by men, but they do not apply by women. Chutz mi mincha sota unazira, with the exception of the karban mincha of the sota and the offering of the nazira, that's the woman that is a nazira, a nazir, shein menifos. In those situations, they do wave the karban. And the Gemara says, smichos, where do we know that smichos applies by men and not women? Dichsiv, as it's written, daber b'nei Yisrael v'samach. It says b'nei Yisrael. It says the sons, b'nei Yisrael somchem ve'en b'nos Yisrael somchos. It applies by the men and not the women. Tenufos, by the waving, also daber b'nei Yisrael v'henif. It says b'nei Yisrael menifin ve'en b'nos Yisrael menifos. The men, they're the ones who wave and not the women. Hagoshos, the bringing close. Dichsiv, as it's written, v'zos Torah hamincha hakre v'osa b'nei Aaron. It says the karban mincha, the B'nei Aaron bring it close. B'nei Aaron v'lo b'nos Aaron, the sons of Aaron, not the daughters of Aaron. Again, it applies to the men and not the women. Kemitzos, the fistful, d'chsiv, as it's written, ve'viol b'nei Aaron. Again, it says you bring to the B'nei Aaron v'kamatz, and you take the kemitzah. B'nei Aaron v'lo b'nos Aaron. Again, the sons of Aaron, not the daughters of Aaron. Haktoros, the burning, d'chsiv, as it's written, v'hiktiru also B'nei Aaron. Again, it says B'nei Aaron, that they burn it. B'nei Aaron v'lo b'nos Aaron, the sons of Aaron, and not the daughters of Aaron. Hamalikos, and the pinching of the neck of the bird offering. Tichsiv molak v'hiktir. It says molak v'hiktir, and that's a hekish. Iskish molikal haktora. Molika, the pinching of the neck, that's compared to the burning on the mizbeach. Just like over there, it's the men and not the women. So too by the molika, hakabolos, and the receiving of the blood. Tichsiv, as it's written, v'hikrivu b'nei Aaron. It says the b'nei Aaron will offer v'yamar mar, and the master said. And we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Lamed Vav Amid Beis.